All right, here with Dad again, and in 83 we're going to talk about today. We really can't get into 84. 84 is long-winded, and 83 is long-winded, so to put them together would be long-winded. Yeah. So what happened in 83, Dad?
Well, it starts out just knocking around in that Grumman, A1A, and Mick, Benville, and Local, and all that, and then sometime in April flew down to Albany with Andy DeBrino, and we spent some time in an AT-6 simulator, came on back, and then in May I flew up to Auburn, Washington to interview for a job at the Robbins Company making tunnel boring machines and so forth for the Vice President of Manufacturing. And it turned out that Dick Robbins' dad had crashed a twin-engine airplane into the mountains, and he inherited the company. And then he was a pilot too, but he quit flying because he scared himself. And then so.
Well, and wasn't he in a big 747 crash?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting story. He was in the first 747 crash. Came out of I think it was in Africa.
Kenya.
Kenya, and they took off, and the guy had set the flaps wrong on the thing, and it settled back into the plane and broke apart, and 162 people were killed, but Dick Robbins was sitting in the middle and he didn't get hurt at all, and it scared the heck out of the management of the company. And so that's an interesting story in itself. So ultimately I accepted a job up there, and meanwhile we took a trip up to Friday Harbor, because I'm also a boater besides being a pilot, and I had this boat in Portland, and since I'm looking about moving up to Seattle, we stopped at Friday Harbor to see if I could moor my boat up in there. So that led me into a interesting boating story. So about it, I had a boat. Let's see if I can show it here like this. This is a 32-foot Clipper Marine, which I had a couple of them. Andy DeBrino and I had two of them, and he and I were partners. And but he ended up selling his, and I kept mine. And two guys who kind of maintained the boat for me were pro sailors out of the eastern United States, and they sailed all over the ocean, and they knew everything about it. So we decided we're going to bring that boat up to Friday Harbor so I could moor it up there and fly up there and use it as my condo. And actually when I moved to the Seattle area, that'd be really handy. And so Jeff and I and these two pro sailors hopped on that boat, and we headed down the Columbia River, and I also got a picture of Jeff on that boat. And, Jeff and I were taking it down the Columbia River, and I was motoring down with Yanmar diesel, and we got to Astoria. I called the Coast Guard. It was getting to be dark, and the Coast Guard said, "Yeah, you better go over the Columbia Bar, which is one of the worst bars in the world in terms of roughness." And I said, "Okay." So we headed out overnight, and I turned over the captainship to these pro sailors, and they headed out, and
yeah, they were certified captains, they said.
I don't know if they were certified or not,
or
but
whatever.
They might have said that. And so we headed out. It was a little bumpy, but I noticed that in the cabin down there that a red light buoy was going by on my right side, and he's obviously off course. I went up there and I got him lined up again because they were getting too close to the South Jetty. We headed out, got out about maybe another 45 minutes, and the number one guy got deathly seasick. He couldn't stay at the wheel. The number two guy came up and took over the controls, and within 15 minutes he was deathly seasick. They took over the aft cabin. They were down there crying for their mamas. Meanwhile, their wives are up in Seattle waiting for the boat to get up there. So Jeff and I took over the helm again and headed out to sea. And we were out about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the engine quit. Oh my crap, what's that all about? So Jeff and I struggled, and we got the sails up to keep from blowing on the shore and all that. And I couldn't believe it because we had enough fuel on board to go all the way to Hawaii. And so we got the sails up and everything, the sun came up. And those guys, they just wanted to go home. They were so sick. So I turned around and headed back to Astoria, and called the Coast Guard and used an old-fashioned RDF navigational device to find out where we were. And the guy came down was on his way down from Alaska, and he dropped off 5 gallons of diesel, and I got the engine running again. Got almost to the bar when it quit. And we pulled into that story turned out that the capstan had broke off on the fuel, and that's what the problem was. But those guys, they ain't going back. They're done, and we ended up taking it back up to Seattle and trucking it up there. And so that was the...
Well, you remember they missed time to going over the bar, so we went over the bar whatever wee hours of the night were, and the waves were huge, mammoth waves that we were splitting through those waves.
That bad. I've been over at worse times, but there was kind of strange weather because it was kind of thunderstormy and the wind was kind of back and forth, so it got bumpy out after we got over the bar. So anyway, those guys...
Well, going through the bar.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, the bar wasn't that bad.
Or maybe it was just right out of the bar. It's probably right out of the bar.
Yeah.
I just remember big, huge waves.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, we did that and ended up trucking the boat up there, and I kept the boat at Friday Harbor, and I'd fly up there, and we'd spend the weekend on it, and those guys never did get the boat up there with their wives. So meanwhile, then we took one trip to the L.A. and for Disneyland or something with Jeff in June. Then in July, I accepted the job at the Robbins Company, and I flew up and was looking around for an airport where I could move on to, and found this Crest Air Park, which I'm on right now, in Washington, and from Covington, not too far from Kent, where our plant was. And so we flew into Kent. It's kind of an interesting airport. A 3,000-foot paved runway and trees at both ends and an FBO. So to me, it was like landing on an international airport compared to a 2,000-foot of grass at Olinger. And so anyway, brought the airplane Grumman up here and started working on moving up here. Got moved up, and then they brought the 310 and the Grumman and all that up there until about November, and then flying around, and we went up through around the Sound in it and all that. It was really a lot of fun. Then Andy DeBrino calls me up, and he had bought this Baron, and had it all fixed up and painted, and new radios put in it and all that. And he says, how about I'll take your 310 on trade for this B55 Baron. And it was a 1973 vintage. Mine's the 1955 310. And he offered me, I don't know, $32,000 for the 310, which is 3 times more than I paid for it. And I said, well, okay. So, and he sold me the Baron, I think, for $55,000. So that was a pretty good deal. So I flew down to Olinger and dropped off the 310, and he went over and he checked me out in the Baron. I think I got a picture of it here someplace. Just a second.
Yeah, and I got a picture here.
Let me get it. I gotta find it. Loading.
Beautiful airplane, and that airplane had been sitting in a hangar back east for several years, from what I recall, and the one side of the whole airplane was faded from just sitting there in the hangar, and there was a window on the one side, and very low time. Very low time. So, and he checked me out in about a half an hour, and I hopped back in it to fly back up to Crest. A normal, nice day, everything, and I made my downwind because I'm going to land from the north runway 16, and I was coming in my first landing at Crest with this Baron, and the Baron's quite a bit different than the 310 in the sense that it lands a little hotter than the 310. So I touched down like I normally do, and I'm starting to slow down, and some guy pulls out in the middle of the runway with a light, ultralight, and I'm slamming on the brakes and just skidding back and forth, and I managed to miss him off to the side. It was so close; it was just a matter of feet between me and him, and got it down in home. And I was at a different taxiway at that time from where my house is now because I was renting a place on a hill, and taxied it home and put it away with the Grumman. And that was kind of the end of '83. We spent some time flying the thing around, but after that it was in November, so that was the end of '83 with the Baron, and starting to fly that And so what did you think of the Baron overall compared to the 310, other than landing?
I wrote an article about this in the Twin Cessna Flyer, and comparing the 310 and the newer 310s with the tilted wing tanks and all that, which I got later. The 310 has longer gears on it, and therefore it has less impact of ground effect when you're landing it. So it's a better short field airplane. The second thing about it, the Baron, and I've been up flying the thing and trying single engine stalls and all that stuff, and I found out that the Baron would go into a flat spin and was unrecoverable even if you had both engines running, would not recover. And there's a guy in Hillsboro, an instructor, who got that happen to, and they 10,000 feet, they flat spun in and killed him. And after that, I immediately had the vortex generators put on the Baron. I mean, it was a nice flying airplane and everything, and but it was basically a bonanza-size interior, while the 310 is about 10 inches wider. So you can always crawl into the back seat if you want to, you know, use the bathroom back there. Well, I'm kidding, of course. And but I mean, the Baron, I flew through some pretty tough weather over the years I had it. So,
and the Baron is utility category.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, it's a tough SOB that way, for
and
sure.
Later on, I think of a couple. The next year, I ended up topping one of the engines and replacing 3 cylinders on the another one. And so, but it was in good shape. Pretty good radios in it. I did install I always put a G meter in my airplane because I like to know how much G's I'm pulling in the rough weather. But I installed we
had an Argus 5000 in there, and then a Loran in there.
The Loran and an indicator.
You can kind of see it here.
Yeah, and boy, at that time it showed the outlines of the various airspace
dual King 155s.
Yeah,
I think he had a stormoscope. You can't see it on this picture. There was a stormoscope, and it was very well equipped for its day.
Yeah, it really was. It had new radios in it, and had an HSI and all that. And the stormoscope,
well, and it had 136 gallons of fuel, good range, fast.
Yeah, it was pretty fast airplane, but I'm not faster. And after I put the vortex generator, slowed it down about a knot. And but having that outline of everything, and it took a while for the Loran to pick up its location. Usually takes 10 minutes into the flight before it figured out where it was. But nonetheless, it was still pretty good stuff for its
pre-GPS.
Yeah,
you know,
that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll meet again.
That gets into the 84.
Yep, 84 is a long one. So
yeah.
We'll see you, gang.
Okay.